Muy buenos días, le damos la bienvenida a este webinar de movilidad sostenible. Es un gusto para nosotros, LAC, de poder
Good morning, everybody. It is a true privilege for us to welcome you all with this initiative of this technical group for sustainable mobility at OLADE. I am Pichel. I am the Director of Projects, Royal Arenga, from the Integration of Processes Unit, and Energy Safety is joining us today. Good morning, Gloria. Gloria is also responsible here within the organization with the technicians, the organization of the work of the technicians who cooperate with OLADE. So if you can share with us, those who are out of our OLADE's world can understand what we do. Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody from our organization, OLADE. In pursuit for optimizing the exchange of experiences in the dissemination of good practices and lessons learned, we took the decision of starting to create the technical groups at OLADE at different areas of interest in the agenda of the ministers. To do so, we have also included ourselves as signatories in the Lima Agreement, along with the work that we do with the technical groups. This group was formed back in 2023 at the Council of Experts, and then after the meeting of ministers, we created these technical teams with different topics, and the topic which gathers us today is the Sustainable Mobility Group, and the leading country exchanging a lot of ideas and experiences is Uruguay. Here we have today with us the agenda that Fidjera will be sharing with us. And within this framework, we're trying to support strengthening processes for the whole region. So thank you, everyone joining us today, either via YouTube or Zoom, in this very intense session. Thank you, Gloria, for your support, for the leadership that you carry out. This is very important for OLADE, for each one of the topics. And the topic that is gathering us today is very relevant and very interesting for the whole region. So I would like to say, apart from welcome you all, I would like to say hello to the Ministry of Energy and Mining from Uruguay, and he is the manager of the Energy Efficiency Office for said ministry. Thank you, Agustin, for joining us today. Luis Felipe Uraña Londoño, he is the manager of Sustainable Resources at NUMA. Ortiz Sanchez, she's the General Director for Planning and Infrastructure in the government of Madrid. Almabio Fernandez, the CEO from CISOCOM Global. And he also manages the bachelor degree for sustainable mobility at the University of Chile, and Antonia Tambasco from the Ministry of Energy, Mining and Energy in Uruguay. She's a specialist in this area. And we would also like to thank and welcome today Mrs. Enriquez. She's an advisor for research in energy sources in Brazil. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we would like to welcome as well those who are joining via YouTube. We'd like to remind you that we have simultaneous translation into Spanish, English, and Portuguese. At the end of our presentations, we will open up for comments and questions that you may have, either via chat or via the exchange that we can have in this Zoom session. We would like to also welcome the national coordinators and other focal points from the LAC Information Data Center. So thank you, everybody. And as I said, this is a very important topic. It is so important that in view of the evolution of the sustainable mobility, and in particular, this monitor system that we launched at OLADE in 2024, we noticed how important this growth is. We noticed that this was a central topic for the countries. And we said, let's go deeper. Let's find out whether we are able to publish a book, the White Book, which is already published. You were part of this task and this endeavor. Here we have an example. This is one of these books, which are available also in Spanish and English at the OLARE and LAC platforms. So we have been working with this topic, and within this technical framework, as Gloria explained to us, we noticed the need and the interest to develop these topics. Well, we are very happy to accompany from OLARE to accompany Uruguay as the leader of this work. Without further ado, I will share with you the agenda. We will be sharing with you a video from our executive secretary. He is not able to join us today. And then we will have Agustin Gonzalez sharing some of his words and presentation with us. After Agustin, we will have Luis Felipe Pirama from NUMA. Then from Madrid, Maria Dolores Ortiz Sanchez will be sharing with us the experience on what they are doing in this particular topic at the municipality of Madrid. And then we will have Danilo Fernandez from Santiago's University, CISARCOM. And then we will give the floor to Rochelle Enriquez from the company of Riquezas Energéticas of Brazil. And we will have then Antonella Tambasco from the MIEM, the Ministry of Energy from Uruguay. Again, we will open up for questions and answers at the end, so thank you so much. We will now show you the video from our Executive Secretary.
Muy buenos días, un saludo a todos y todas. Hoy día nos convoca.
Good morning, everybody.
Un tema muy importante.
Today we are joining all the efforts of the region through the objective of decarbonization, and this has to do with the electrification of mobility and electrical mobility. This is why we drafted this white book for electric mobility that we share with you in the last Energy Week at Santiago, where you can see the progress made in this sense. And we have been incorporating massively e-cars, but we're still having great challenge ahead of us in terms of the needs to make progress in interconnectivity models in the region and the charging infrastructure. We have to continue to share experiences, to learn from each other. Today, we're going to get to listen to professionals from different countries who will share their experience with us. And then after this exchange of knowledge, this will also be very fruitful for the public policies of the 27 country members. So please be welcome.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias. Ahora le pedimos a Agustín González.
Okay, Agustin Gonzalez, the manager for the Energy Efficiency Unit at Uruguay. Thank you. You have the floor.
Bueno, buenos días a todas y todos.
Good morning, everybody.
Saludar la nueva denominación de la organización.
I would like to again celebrate this new denomination for OLARE and the Caribbean Unit. It is a true pleasure for us to be part of this initiative and this new nomenclature that we're using. And in particular, today, we're going to be discussing sustainable mobility. This is a topic that we have been discussing. We have already exchanged experiences within the framework of this GDO for mobility, this working group. As a leading country, we have worked within the framework of meetings which took place this year, and transportation is two-third share in the consumption, in the total emissions of the energy sector. So this is very relevant. It is a key sector in the decarbonization strategy that the country has. And this implies to articulate to coordinate among a very broad of stakeholders with diverse responsibilities included at the different levels of the government, and integrate the planning for mobility in the territory with the different related policies. So in this decarbonization process, electrical mobility has been consolidating itself as a core alternative, and it clearly shows an exponential growth, which is gathered in this white book published by Olare, which clearly shows this growth at a regional level. And of course, this deployment has to be complemented with other actions that have to do with things associated to biofuels, green hydrogen, and its derivatives. So these technologies are far from competing among each other. They have to complement each other, offering solutions that are going to be adequate to the different uses of transportation in this case. So it is very important to work in a coordinated manner, and in particular, we are committed to reach towards 2030 a goal of 50% of urban buses for public transportation to be e-buses by 2030. And this is also aligned with a new policy for sustainable urban mobility, which was passed at the beginning of this year. And this is also aligned with one of the main instruments that we have to favor this exchange for the bus fleet that has to do with the trust for sustainable mobility. All these policies and instruments Uruguay was able to push this in the agenda. So it is a true pleasure for us to be part of this working group, and I'm sure that we will get to learn about the current situation of the different countries as we move ahead in this meeting, and we will be able to continue to work together. So again, this growth for the e-vehicles, the e-cars, which is gathered in the region, has grown a lot, and sustainable mobility has to be central, and we have to continue to control the CO2 emissions in order to improve the mobility of citizens. And the challenge has to do with the development of charging stations and the coordination inside the region, which has to be present in our agendas.
Para finalizar mis palabras, les deseo, por supuesto, un fructífero intercambio que además doy por descontado, dada la calidad del
I wish you a fruitful exchange. Thank you. No, thank you, Agustin. We have a wonderful 2026 agenda for this group being led by Agustin together with everyone from the Bureau. So Agustin Gonzalez Blanc, thank you for your words. Now let us move on to contributions. We begin with Luis Felipe Girama from Kiruma, how they see the progress in sustainable mobility, what they have been doing, and maybe you can share your results and your experiences. Thank you, Luis Felipe. Okay, you have the floor.
Mil gracias, Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Fitzgerald.
Quisiera extenderles un saludo a OLACDE, al Grupo Técnico de Movilidad.
Thank you, OLACDE, and the Technical Group of Sustainable Mobility. Thank you for leading this technical group, and also thank you to my colleagues that are part of this panel, and thank you to all the representatives from the governments of Latin America and the Caribbean. I am Luis Felipe Kirama, and I work in the Sustainable Mobility Program of the United Nations, of the Program for the Environment. And I want to tell you today a bit about what we are doing within the program to support e-mobility within the region. Okay, so initially I want to tell you that this is our headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya, under the Industry Division and Electromobility Division, and we have multiple projects there that seek to cover the different challenges and angles for electromobility within the region. We quality and about the digitalization of transportation, which is also a huge challenge that we're covering within our portfolio. Now, having said this, I would like to begin by saying that transport outside of cities is one of the main factors that contribute to the crisis, the climate crisis that we're facing in the world. Actually, this is one of the sectors that contributes the most greenhouse effect gases. Actually, 1/4 of all emissions that are nationally produced come from the transport sector. And at the same time, this is a sector that produces contaminating gases that undermine the quality of air. And obviously, all the roadway infrastructure goes into conflict with the biodiversity and the preservation of ecosystem. But at the same time, it faces many challenges, like dealing with single transportation that is using both light and heavy vehicles for one person. And we also have legislations that allow for using vehicles with low emissions and energy efficiency standards. It's also a sector that, for the most part, depends on fossil fuels, and active mobility, non-motorized mobility, should be further promoted within our cities. Now, these two elements in the transport sector are elements that we have been working from a very regional perspective. And we have defined 4 fundamental elements. First, the decarbonization of the transport system. And we're not just talking about e-mobility here, but we're also talking about coordinating energy efficiency and fuel quality actions. We're also promoting active non-motorized mobility, pulling all of our efforts towards strengthening public transportation and shared transportation systems. We believe that focusing on technology also becomes a possibility to bridge the gender gap that exists within the transport sector, mostly trying to prioritize women as the groups that will get more capacity building so that we can tackle the challenges in the sector. And we also have the challenge of providing data that can be publicly accessed so that we can have public policies that are better adapted and better suited for local context. And I am going to be focusing on these 2 points that I'm highlighting here, and I want to tell you about the work that we have been doing in the region in those areas. First and foremost, at the regional level, we have made progress in terms of the quality of the fuels that are being used. We actually see that the countries are becoming more aware about the need of improving the quality of fuels, because that has a direct impact on the quality of the air, and that has an impact as a result in public health. But we also have the tech component as well that we need to pay attention to, because when we're talking about improving the quality of fuels, we also need to talk about improving emission standards, which are going to be compatible with the quality of those fuels. We have leading countries in the region that have been decreasing sulfur contents both for light and heavy vehicles. And we also face, however, several challenges at the regional level. In Central America and in the Caribbean especially, we are trying, by supporting these countries, to have them gradually reduce sulfur contents in diesel, and for that to go hand in hand with the Euro 5 and Euro 6 standards in these countries. We also want to highlight the importance of energy efficiency and electromobility. These 2 aspects go hand in hand, and we cannot work in one without working on the other. And if you look at these forecasts from the ICCT from 2019, we see that if we work only on energy efficiency measures, we will be reaching a level of 10 million tons of reduction of CO2. That's the blue line that you see here. But if you complement that with electromobility in decisive scenarios, we will be able to have a decrease in CO2 by reach the 6 million tons. So we're not just talking about energy efficiency, we're also talking about e-mobility, and we want to work on this in light and heavy duty transport as well, and two-wheelers and three-wheelers as well, which are becoming more prominent in the region because they're a good alternative for transportation. And the forecast for 2050 indicate that the biggest contributor to reaching our goal are the active non-motorized transportations. And so there is complementarity between these actions, and I want to invite you because of that to think about electromobility not just as a single solution, but as a solution that goes hand in hand and works very well with energy efficiency.
Estas medidas que acabo de mencionar se pueden reducir en un concepto.
These measures can be reduced to a concept that we are working on, which are supply-side regulations, or SSR. There are certain countries that have made progress with regulations in this area. California and China actually have mandates, if you will, so that vehicle sellers can include within their portfolios e-vehicles, and for them to actually meet quotas for the sale of these vehicles. Also, within the EU and within the United States alike, we see great commitment to tier standards and to Euro standards, which help meet the standards of the vehicles that are being part of their fleets. And in Chile, they are covering an energy efficiency legislation that covers light and heavy duty vehicles, and they're improving the use of energy in their fleets. Apart from Chile, we also have India that is adopting fleet side regulations as well. Now, these regulations are not new. Now, actually, they've been around for quite a few years. They've been implemented for several years, and there are many countries across the world that have been adopting them. Now, many of these reductions then lead to a gradual decrease in the emissions of national fleets. And this can happen because of two reasons, actually. One, because of a market scenario in which the countries are getting better vehicles with better technologies, but also that market scenario is then leveraged by the adoption of regulations that are focused on the supply side. These supply side regulations foster the adoption of EVs, thus allowing for a transition to electromobility. And I think I might be jumping the gun, but I do want to mention a conclusion of my presentation, and that's the fact that if we want to promote electromobility in our countries, we need to have regulations that seek to control CO2 emissions and greenhouse effect gases, and the use of internal combustion vehicles. Now, there are many types of regulations that enable us to do that. We are focusing particularly in those that are regulations geared on working with the vehicles and automotive sectors in our countries. And we want to highlight two: a standard for vehicle performance and a standard for EV availability. So these are standards that try to establish what is the need to have e-vehicles available in the different markets. Now, in this case, I also want to show you a couple of examples of the impact of having these supply side regulations enforced. Over here, you can see how my apologies, but the speaker froze. We cannot hear him. We lost to Luis Felipe, or we are disconnected. I think it's Luis Felipe. Luis Felipe, can you hear us?
Hola.
Luis Felipe quedó sin señal, parece.
¿Quedó, verdad?
He lost his signal, apparently.
Sí, parece que sí. Bueno, creo que estaba ahí en las últimas láminas, pero lo hemos perdido.
I think we lost him.
A ver, María Dolores Ortiz Sánchez, si estás pronta para que le demos paso.
Okay, maybe we can go to Maria Dolores Ortiz Sanchez. Yes, I'm here.
Estás en la oficina, estamos-
Okay, you're in your office. We can rest easy, right? Yeah. I'm here. I'm not driving anymore. Don't worry about it.
María Dolores, como decíamos,
Okay, so Maria Dolores or Lola, she works in the Town Hall of Madrid, and she was telling us about the intense work that they are doing in the transition of their vehicle fleet. So you have the floor. We want to hear what you guys are doing. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. It is a pleasure to be in this very interesting session. At the European level, we are also working on improving our fleets and electrifying our fleets. So please let me share my screen to show you a presentation about the work that we're doing. Can you see my slides? You can see it, right? Yeah. There. So in Madrid, we also have an issue with air quality. It's very significant, especially since 2019. And ever since we established the new government, we established the Madrid 360 strategy. It's 360 because it's global. It covers the entire city. And we also want this to be a cross-cutting strategy to cover all sectors so that Madrid can be more environmentally sustainable, but also more socially, territorially, and financially sustainable. So we want a more sustainable Madrid, a more efficient Madrid, a smarter Madrid, a more global Madrid, a healthier Madrid, and a more accessible Madrid. So in 2019, the new administration in Madrid launched the environmental sustainability strategy in September. We're always assessing it, of course, to try and see how we can improve it. And that is why we are always conducting a continuous assessment of the strategy. Our goal is to transform the city in three main axes, which we understand are the most important to improve air quality. Basically, we wanted to look at the city by improving energy efficiency, improve mobility infrastructures, and foster the development of green areas. We now have a metropolitan woodland area in the city that help us mitigate the effect of emissions. Obviously, mobility becomes a fundamental vector here because it's the highest contaminant, and that's why we need to promote micromobility, e-mobility, and we want to have clean public transportation. So obviously, we need to foster the renovation of the vehicle fleet. We also need to improve our management and be more efficient, and in order to put all of our measures into place, we had to, of course, modify many ordinances and regulations, and that's why we built a new regulation. Now, so over here, we have the different areas within the transformation axis that we're covering. I'm going to focus more on mobility that has to do with fostering public transportation, integrating all transportation means, and the technology that can be very helpful. Then we also have to focus on limitations for the most contaminant vehicles. We look towards having people walk more and use bikes. And also we need to look at the urban distribution of goods, which seems to be rather silly, but it leads to congestions and contamination. In that sense, we have established more than 286 initiatives, out of which we have completed 77%, and we continue working on this. Plus, we will be updating the strategy with additional measures in order to better improve air quality. So within the regulations that we have been implementing, we have had to modify multiple ordinances, like the one for air quality and sustainability, which we passed in 2021 to foster energy efficiency in buildings. We also have cab regulators. We have also tried to electrify the taxi fleet. We also have a sustainable mobility ordinance, which is the center and the core of our strategy. We have the waste management ordinance, because the city was very dirty and citizens were asking for us to improve cleanliness. We also created a roadmap for climate neutrality. Madrid has been also chosen by the EU as a mission city for the European Commission. For 2030, we also have the 360 Sustainable Mobility Plan that fully aligns with the ordinance and with the Sustainable Mobility Strategy. We also have an urban distribution goods strategy to better optimize our public spaces, right? In our big city, public spaces are quite limited. So in order to optimize their use, we launched the strategy. And we also have the sound protection strategy to better improve the life quality of our citizens. Now, over here, we have the most important elements of our ordinances. For example, forbidding the use of carbon boilers, having the ordinance of sustainable mobility that introducing low emission zones. So right now, Madrid is an entire low emission zone. And that means that the mean age of vehicles in Spain is somewhere around 15 years, but in Madrid, we have reduced it to 11 years. So in these years, we have been able to reduce the mean age of the vehicle fleet in Madrid in comparison to the rest of the country. And we have also introduced other elements that are very important for e-mobility. Here we have other regulations that I mentioned in the past that I'm not going to focus on, but let me talk about the low emissions zone. The success of this low emission zone is that we progressively introduced them between 2022 up until 2026, and only for those vehicles that contaminate the most. In Spain, we have environmental labels to classify vehicles, and the ones that contaminate the most are the ones that are using gasoline and got their license plates before the year 2000, and the diesel ones that got their plates after year 2006. And it's entirely forbidden for them to circulate in Madrid, but we did that progressively. Since 2022, we started forbidding their access to Madrid for people that were outside of the city, and after each year, we started extending the scope of the low emission zone, and then in 2025, we reached an entire low emission zones for the city. So no one can circulate using these old vehicles across the city. This has, of course, entailed a significant improvement in air quality. And also, to help citizens not to have a hard time with this transition, we have been providing subsidies to the citizens. So practically, we have been providing subsidies between 2020 and 2023, 87 million euro to renovate micromobility, the taxi fleet, and individuals vehicles as well. And we have actually provided help for good distribution vans as well. And all of this we have done in order to support citizens so that they can make the switch and enable the transition. Also, the Madrid Town Hall has a municipal transportation company that is in charge of managing public e-bikes, parking sites, and buses. So we're trying to foster the electrification of the bus fleet of this agency. In order to do that, we have been laying out over 90 kilometers of bus-only lanes. We have bus-only lanes across the city, and we have a bus rapid lane as well. We have also had to deploy operation centers to charge these buses. We have had to deploy that infrastructure. And we have in the fostering of this public transportation, we actually had certain days in which the public transportation was free for all citizens. We decided that it was a good thing to provide certain days in which we knew that there was more congestion to provide free transportation in bus, like Black Friday. So on Black Friday, public transportation was free. Or for example, in the first week of school, we had a lot of congestion. So during that week, for example, the public transportation was free. Or even when we had the NATO assembly where the system was kind of collapsed, we also provided free public transportation, and we had all-time records of bus uses. And that also led to people realizing that we had improved the fleet and that the buses were comfortable. So that also led to people using public transportation more. Now, we have been creating 200 lines. They are free for everyone, and they cover the downtown area of the city. They're great. They are small microbuses that can circulate freely across the city, and they are very successful. Also, since December 2022, Madrid became the first large European city that has 100% clean buses. They are gas vehicles or e-vehicles, no fossil fuel vehicles. And over here, you can see how they are charged. Yes, the idea is that actually the drivers have to do nothing. They can just park in their spot, and we have an inverted charger that descends, and the vehicle is fully charged. And we are actually working intensely in deploying more of these areas. Now, the Municipal Transportation Authority now has a fleet that is 100% green, and we are also looking at the possibility of including hydrogen. We are now processing green hydrogen, so we are also looking at including it as well. So this is a plan to electrify the fleet. We want by 2027 to have 1/3 of the entire fleet to be 100% electric. Now we're also using technology, and that's why we created an app called Madrid Mobility 360 that helps us show the schedule with all the means of transportation. We also want to foster intermodal transportation so that a person can reach the city using one means of transportation and then choose other modes of transportation, like a scooter or walking or an e-bike, so that they can schedule this and even book these means of transportation. We have also expanded the MICIMAD. We want to expand and foster and leverage the use of e-bikes across the different districts of the city. We have over 7,891 e-bikes, and we're actually entering into cities, into agreements with neighboring cities next to Madrid to also share these bikes. And on the days that we are offering free bus transportation, we are also offering free e-bike transportation as well, so that we can provide access to another mobility option that is interesting for citizens. We have also sought to expand the bike lanes across the city. And we have also been working on a new manual to design these bike lanes when they are interacting with many other urban areas, so that they are safe and accessible. And over here, we have a summary of that. We also had updates for scooters, but we had to remove them because companies were really not complying with the specs, because they couldn't use the walkway and they had to park in very specific areas. And because companies were not really complying with those requirements, they can no longer be used.
Luego también hemos peatonalizado todos los distritos de Madrid. En todos los distritos tenemos una zona peatonal.
In every district in Madrid, we have crosswalk areas, and that is great. And that's great because people in Madrid, they use public transportation, but when they want to go door to door, they have to walk. Look at Puerta del Sol. We have an entire area for pedestrians. We actually eliminated almost 7,000 vehicles in circulation in the area. We have pedestrian signs. We also have the strategy for the urban distribution of goods, and that costs 20% of congestion and 15% of contamination. Because obviously in those vans the technology was more obsolete. So we have expanded the loading and docking areas, and now we have a reservation space. So they have to book a space in order to load and unload goods. We have in this way better optimized the public spaces in the city by using this app for loading and unloading. We have also improved other infrastructures that led to a lot of congestion, like the construction of the northern node. We actually have created different levels for the roads, which has led to a significant reduction in emissions. Then we have Plaza de España. We actually did a remodeling here, and the traffic goes below the public space. We had traffic that was around it, and now it's under it, and that has led to us creating a pedestrian walkway that goes from one side to the other that is very pretty. Another action that led us to recover a public space is the Mount Calderon space, where we covered the area of street number 30, and we have created a significantly large green space. We also have a bus rapid, and when the bus reaches the street lights, then the street light turns green, and so you reduce the time in which the people are on the bus. This bus connects two hospitals, the Valdebebas and Ramón y Cajal Hospital. Another significant action that we are conducting is the work of the green walkway that goes from the south to the west. We had 4 lanes in this area, but we want to create a tunnel. We're actually in construction of this tunnel with 3 lanes in this large green area that covers 3.5 kilometers. Will be connecting us to another green area. Look at how it will be afterwards. Another element that is very interesting are vertical gardens. The vertical gardens that we have on street number 30. Basically, these are now large vertical walls that have gardens that have actually gained the Guinness record for their size, and that improve air quality. We are actually measuring the impact that they have on air quality, and plus this is a green area that reduces temperature, etc., etc. And we also have the metropolitan forest. So while we have the M30, which is a ring that surrounds the city, we also want to do the same thing, but we want it to be green, and we want to have a metropolitan forest. It is like a large ring that is surrounding the city that takes advantage of public and private parks to better connect the city through a large ring that will be considerably reducing emissions and improving air quality. Look at the intense work that we're doing here. Over here, you can see an example of how we were working in one of the areas of this metropolitan forest. We also have multimodal parkings. We have 7 of those in Madrid. And what we're doing is we're transforming all of these parkings in mobility hubs so that they're not just spaces to park vehicles, but they can be charging stations, logistics areas for car sharing, for motorbike sharings. We have also expanded the regulated parking area. We have public access for charging stations. We also are working on waste management and cleanliness. And as you can see, we highly improved that for the city. We also have waste management in order to improve circular economy with over 42 million euros. And we also have a green zone, and actually several green zones, right apart from the metropolitan forest and the large areas that we are covering. To create green areas, we are making a considerable investment in the maintenance of the parks across the city, and we are actually using large amounts of funds. And last but not least, and I think the most important thing, is that we have increased the amount of charging stations by 4 this year. And we have areas where people can charge their e-vehicles in the city. We believe that this works wonders for them. And all of this has entailed that Madrid can finally breathe. Madrid has incredible air quality. We are meeting the standards for the European guideline for air quality in 2022 and 2023, and we met the goal of our strategy. Over here, you see the mean values of how contamination has been considerably decreasing, and we are doing better each year. And the important thing is that we are improving and we are constantly assessing the strategy by introducing new measures to improve air quality. And over here, I have one thing to comment on big data to show you that we work on how to plan and design the city using big data. We have over here a chart for figures for the city. Since December 2023, we actually have been covering 15 million journeys a day. This city is alive and active, but we're always improving sustainable development, improving public transportation, and improving the possibility of people walking across Madrid. So that was it for me. That's what I wanted to say. We have conducted very significant work this year. We met the air quality directive. We have many areas in the city that are having an impact on congestion, but we are going to be working on that in several areas to have more public spaces in the city, and we will be then reducing congestion. That's what I wanted to comment on. I hope you're interested in it. Thank
you. Fantástico. Muchísimas gracias, Lola.
Thank you, Lola.
Creo que es un sentimiento compartido de todos aquí.
You actually made us want to go to Madrid. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think that's a great example of how public policy really makes an effort and manages to improve the life quality of people, which is what all public policies want. Now, I will obviously ask you, please, to continue sharing your experiences with us next year. So thank you for joining us and hope to see you soon. Okay. I think Luis Felipe is here again. I don't know if you want to go back to your presentation and wrap it up.
Bueno, si no, continuamos con la agenda que nos hemos propuesto. Ahora le vamos a dar la palabra a Hernán Nilo Fernández.
Moving with the agenda, let's go to Hernán Nilo Fernández, the CEO of Caesarcom Global, and also the president of the e-mobility diploma in the University of Santiago. Hernán, are you here?
Todo tuyo, Hernán, para compartir. Adelante.
Perfecto, hola, ¿cómo están? Buenos días a todos.
you. Good morning. It is a true pleasure to be with you here today. Today we're going to be talking about the work that we have been developing across Latin America and how e-mobility in the cities and in the region has grown. What are the gaps that we have faced, and what are the outlooks that we have had to have for the future implementation of e-mobility. I know that I have 15 minutes. I know that this is a very ample topic, but I'll try to go slowly.
Está el presentador, ¿cierto?
Cierto, presentador.
Pero se ve la
Sí,
siguiente.
sí, estamos.
Sí,
Presentador, ya lo voy a poner.
Lo voy a mover. Dame un segundo. Ahí está la página completa, ¿cierto?
Can you see the full screen now?
Ahora vemos. Ahora sí.
Oh, yeah, we can. Yep.
Como les comentaba al inicio, yo soy
Okay, so as I
el
was
director
telling
de
you at the
vinculación
beginning,
del
I
medio
am
del
the
de la
director of the
Universidad de
e-mobility
Chile.
diploma for the Santiago de Chile University. This is an international diploma that we offer together with the LAC.
El diplomado a toda la región.
And we are sharing this diploma with all the countries in the region. And we are very happy because we have been able to deliver technical knowledge and discuss public policies on e-mobility across the region. Also, as I'm here as the CEO of Cicercom, a company that is fully devoted to e-mobility with presence in Chile, Paraguay, Bolivia, and soon in Ecuador. So we are moving forward by leaps and bounds in the design of infrastructure, providing advice on how to develop public policies across the region. Now, let's talk a bit about regional progress first. Okay, let's talk about what has been done already in the region and who has done what. But first, as a global overview, we know that some countries in the region have been pioneers in the development of e-mobility, but I do want to focus on two of them, which I believe are the most significant. And by that, I mean that they have considerably developed e-mobility. First and foremost, I want to talk about Colombia, right? Because if we look at Colombia, I think are able to see how public policies can be properly used to implement e-mobility with financial and non-financial incentives to better implement and acquire the e-vehicles. In Colombia, they segmented implementation and they decreased taxes for the purchase of e-vehicles. And one thing that really catches our attention when we look at Colombia is that the public policy wasn't about equality. It was about equity. What they wanted was they wanted to better favor that part of society that needed the most support, like cab drivers, so that they can move towards e-vehicles and make that transition, so that they showed us the way. They showed us that if you provide tax incentives, you can see an increase. They actually saw an increase in 123%. So the year after they implemented the decrees, and by doing that, they were able to electrify light transportation in Colombia. I think that they are actually leading the way in how to implement e-light vehicles in the region. Now, let me talk about Chile now. Outside of China, Chile is the only other country in the world that has the most electric buses. And by the end of next year, we will have implemented over 41 electro terminals that will allow for charging for 1,000 e-buses. So over 60% of the transport fleet has been electrified. I think Chile shows us that how when we design a business model that leverages the purchase of the vehicles and the deployment of the infrastructure, we are able to make a good synergy between the public and the private worlds. This is something that several other countries in the region are doing, but Chile has been the guiding light for those countries. We do understand that technology has a high cost, but the model that Chile implemented really allows for us to have a cross-cutting impact across the country. As a matter of fact, in Chile, we have a city that has reached 100% electrification of public transportation. So when the public world and the private world get together and work together, we can make great progress. And I think the numbers speak for themselves, actually. We have across the region 7,273 e-buses, including trolleys, articulated buses, minibuses, standard buses. So we have ample variety as well in terms of the kinds of e-vehicles and e-buses that we have in the region. But this also goes to show, and this is something that we always tell our students, that you can obviously take international experience as an example, but you have to take it, you have to read it, and then you have to adapt it to your context because you have different climates, different geographies. So based on your context, you need to figure out what technology is most suited for your country, because not all buses are suitable for all places. After actually having implemented a 60% change in the e-bus fleet, we realized that we needed to make changes based on the context of each city. Now, in order for this to work, first we need to have a mandatory electromobility strategy. That strategy is going to tell us what are the pillars that we need to execute so that this can be properly implemented. Now, under the strategy, we need to figure out what are going to be the pilot plans that we're going to be implementing in order to reach solutions? So any country needs to have this umbrella. The umbrella is a national e-mobility strategy. Then we identify landmarks. Now that we have an established public policy, we can start making progress. Over here you have the disaggregated information. We have Chile, 2,882. And please don't forget that we will be adding 1,200 more buses. So we'll be topping 4,000 buses. Colombia, they're breathing down our necks, implementing e-buses. And we also have Mexico, Brazil, Ecuador, and Argentina. And these are just some of the countries in the region that can show us the way forward. Now, the reason why we show this is because most of greenhouse effect gases that come from the transport system come from buses. So here we're directly tackling climate change. And the countries in the region can use this transition in their public transportation to prevent climate change and take steps back in this process of climate change. So by improving e-mobility in transportation, we are taking action against climate change. Now, I do know that we're still contaminating because many energy mixes follow the fossil fuel system. And yes, that's right. We need to have complementarity. We need to make it so that our energy mixes are renewable. If we don't do that, we're just hiding the problem. Right? So I think that's where each and every single one of our countries need to have proper models. In the case of Chile, every single call for a tender for public transportation provides a better score, provides a better score for those companies that have e-vehicles. But at the same time, we have another effect, which is an increase in the renewable energy mix. So in that way, the ecosystem works better. Over here, look at these very important areas. This e-vehicle charging station has a capacity of over 12 megas. It is the second largest charging station in the world.
también aprendiendo y haciendo el análisis.
And this is also where we're learning and we're conducting an analysis, right? Because as time went by, we realized we really didn't need to have such large charging stations. We just needed to manage the charging systems. But that also leads us to have a conversation about one of the biggest problems that we have, right? Which is how to manage the grid. I'm so sorry. There is someone talking. They have their mic open. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Alguien está hablando. Entonces, con esto, ¿qué nos permite? Identificar esta
So what I was saying is that this enables us to figure out what the real problem is, which is the electricity distribution system. In each city, there are different problems. This means that maybe I can't have charging stations everywhere or an e-terminal everywhere. So the problem, which is the distribution side of things, is something that we need to work on but we need to work on them now because we have NDCs and we have to comply with them as per the Paris Agreement. In some cases, the countries say that by 2040, all the public transportation has to be electrified. But you have to bridge a gap, which is the distribution system, because the region wasn't really prepared to meet with this consumption demand. In many countries, actually, what is happening is that the distribution system cannot burden the load. I was actually advising Ecuador this year, and I was surprised. You know, they surveyed and they mapped out Quito, which is impressive to say the least, because it's large. And when they did this, they were able to identify where they could have electrical terminals in Quito so that they can quickly electrify transportation. By having that information, we were able to work faster. And this could be done in every country as well. You know, Colombia did it in Bogota and in Cali. They mapped out the electrical distribution system. It's real. It is live 24/7. And you see where you can deploy the technology in different areas. So I think it's vital for every country to have that if they want to better design the infrastructure to meet the demands of this new electrified fleet. Now, another question that we have to tackle is charging density and the lack of infrastructure to charge these vehicles. And if you see this graph, you can see the progress in the amount of e-vehicles and plug-in hybrids and how they're taking up a larger participation within the fleet. Obviously, technology has been growing by leaps and bounds, and we all know that between 40 and 50% of the cost of a vehicle, that is an electrical vehicle, comes from the battery. Now, the technology in the battery has improved. So the energy density improves because I can have more energy by 1 kilogram of battery. The performance on average was of 200 kilometers, and now we can reach 500 or 600 based on the improvement of the technology. But obviously, today we even have superchargers. At the beginning, we had a small volume of e-vehicles, and that was fine. You could charge them. We had some chargers available, but now that the e-vehicle fleet has increased, the infrastructure is lacking. So we need to improve it. We need to have more public options so that vehicles can be charged. A supercharge should take between 20 minutes. Right? Obviously, when you want to put fuel in a vehicle, it takes 5 minutes on average, right? But now, if we're getting closer to 20 minutes, people say, okay, I want to have an e-vehicle. And if, for example, I have public policies like in Ecuador that help me buy these vehicles, and I want to buy them because I can even have a performance of between 500 and 600 kilometers, which is what normally happens with a combustion vehicle. So when I look at this progress in the technology, I know that we can make a transition. But there's another problem, and that's standardization. What we can see is that most of the countries have decided that the plug should be a Type 2 plug, but some use Type 1. What we want is for there to be standardization and interoperability so that we can move across the region using e-vehicles. I mean, I can move to a neighboring country like from Chile and Peru, or Chile, Argentina. I want to move across the region as well using e-vehicles because I know the performance of these e-vehicles is improving. I know that I can move across the region using them, but I need to improve infrastructure and I also need to standardize for interoperability. So I would like for those countries that are not following the standard across the region to align with us because we should be able to move freely across the region using these e-vehicles, right? And I think we need to understand where we do our charges, right? Obviously, it takes time for vehicles to move to charging stations that are public and infrastructure is lacking. So a lot of people are charging their vehicles at home. That's where we see more chargers be deployed for e-vehicles. But the problem goes hand in hand with what I already mentioned, which is the distribution system, because we also have old grids, old buildings where you cannot charge your vehicles. And that is where we need to make an improvement because the loading profile is mostly focused now on homes. People don't want to connect to a public charging station because there might be two vehicles and that implies wasting time. And that's where people say, I would rather have the charger at home. But if the distribution system doesn't allow for that, that's another problem for me. So adopting electromobility isn't easy. Okay, and that's why governments need to have cross-cutting vision. We are also talking about the electrical grid and about the energy mix. And we also have to improve human capital. We need to train our human capital. And as a matter of fact, in Chile, we're very proud of the fact that the people that pushed for the decrees that enabled us to have this transition in the public transportation were women who believed in the technology. So having a gender approach is important. We actually have over 1,000 women who are driving this public transportation. So really, there's a task that is important for us as well. We need to develop a gender approach as we're working on this. Now let us look at Chile, right? We have over 47 megas in the implementation of the infrastructure. We have 1,300 charging stations, but this tells us that we have a way to go. We still need to implement e-mobility projects. So, outside of China, I think the region has shown us that we can implement electromobility. Many countries have been visiting Ecuador, Colombia, and Chile to figure out their model, but each government needs to have public policies that adjust to their reality. So you can't just think about having one solution that fits all. And we're going to use this international standard. No, you have to look at it, you have to study it, and you need to adjust it to your context. And that's what we've done in Peru, in Bolivia, in Ecuador, in Colombia. And by doing this, we then are able to properly increase the e-vehicle fleet. So that's what we have been doing in the region. And now let me tell you about some very important moments in time. This is a picture of the first electro terminal that we deployed. And we have electric buses arriving. And we actually had a pilot, right? We had a pilot process. A lot of people didn't really know how this worked. People said, okay, if this bus goes out of the rain, it's not going to work, right? So we had to dispel the myths by running a pilot, right? This electric bus actually circulated across 5 cities of the metropolitan region, over 140,000 kilometers. And then we deployed this electro terminal in Chile, the largest one outside of China. We also have electric cabs. And what we did was we provided a subsidy for the users, somewhere between $12,000 and $14,000. Because if they want to sell their cab, their combustion engine cab, and buy an electric cab, the price difference is very large. So we had to provide them with a subsidy. Look at the logistics world, right? This is a last mile. And it's been incredible to see how it turned to vehicles like Mercado Libre, DHL. I mean, they are turning electric. And in some countries, it's great business even, because we know that the value of the kilometer circulated fluctuates and it decreased between 70 and 80%. Maintenance level also decreased by 70%. Failure rates also decreases. So really, adopting electromobility makes financial sense, right? When private companies are analyzing projects, they say, okay, this makes financial sense. Then we had to generate an electro station. And in 2022, we deployed this project, which was, I think, bringing the future to the present, because we knew that gas stations had to be gradually transformed. So we wanted to show a station that was like a gas station, but only for electrical vehicles. So here we have different chargers with different connectors that enable us to charge all sorts of vehicles, light vehicles, heavy vehicles. Then in Uber, we actually created a charging park for 170 chargers because we wanted to fully electrify transportation. Now, having said this, I want to thank you. We as a university are open to supporting LAC. We have been working together, and it has been so important for us to understand how this region has made progress and how the different countries that have been leading the way in this area have had great success in e-mobility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hernando. You have shared with us a great overview. So just to simply add something that Hernan said, and we have to include here payment, right? So it has to be also easy for us to move from one country to another. So we have to now give the chance to our colleague because she's going to El Salvador. Yes, we're going to continue to work because of the need of tools I would like to thank you so much. I have to leave. Sorry, we have another meeting, but I will have to leave. Okay, we will continue with the webinar. Gloria, we will leave. Graciela Enriquez is the technical consultant in the company Pesquisas Energéticas in Brazil for energy research. And she's going to be sharing with us her experience, which is very important for the region. So, Rachel, you have the floor.
Buenos días a toda la gente. ¿Puede me escuchar?
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? I'll try to speak in Spanish, but if I'm not able to, then I will switch to Portuguese. I know that we have translation. Yes, that's okay.
¿Pueden ver la presentación?
Can you see my presentation? Not yet.
Sí, ¿no?
Can you see it now?
Yo aquí no lo estoy viendo.
No estoy viendo.
No, we're not seeing your presentation yet.
Sí,
Try to refresh, please.
sí, así.
Okay, now you're sharing. Yes.
Perfecto, ¿puedo empezar?
Perfecto, adelante.
Bueno, buenos días otra vez para la gente. Me llamo Raquel
Good morning,
Enríquez.
everybody. My name is Raquel Enriquez. I work in the Brazilian company for energy research. We are responsible for the statistics, the management of all this data. And this presentation is based on the products that we developed, and it is available in our website. And it is in particular giving information for electromobility in our market. This is the working team, very qualified team, which enable us to carry out this kinds of work. Then, talking about the company that I represent, this is a public company. We have around 400 employees located at Rio de Janeiro. And our mission is to represent and to advise the ministry in terms of policy making. Here we have a small summary. I will talk about light vehicles, and then I will move on to buses and other kinds of vehicles. This presentation has a lot of data. If you have any doubt, I will be available for you to answer. Starting with light vehicles, in Brazil, in the recent past, we have a huge increase in sales for e-vehicles. Take a look at the numbers, take a look at the bars. The behavior changes a lot. The volume has been about 11% of sales. So the e-cars represent an 11% of the total vehicle sales in the country. This is very important. It is a very important figure because it represents that there is an increase. Every year we notice an increase. This has been a steady increase over the last 6 years. Why is this happening? There are several reasons, but the most important one is for the prices. The prices for engine combustion vehicles are very expensive, and the e-vehicles, the batteries, the technologies, the kinds of e-vehicles, EVs, are going cheaper. And the Brazilian manufacturing companies have started to manufacture these cars locally. So this has, of course, impacted the perception that our citizens have regarding EVs. Here in the map, you can see the darker color represents the higher concentration of EVs. At the beginning, there was a policy to offer discounts for these purchases. There are still some states in Brazil where there is a specific policy to promote these kinds of EVs in São Paulo or the Federal District, which is Brasilia, Rio de Janeiro, Pernambuco, Paraíba, and Rio de Janeiro of the north. Here is Rio de Janeiro, I'm moving the mouse, and then the Federal District is in the middle. And here I'm pointing the different regions. So if you can see, there is an increase of sales in this darker region. In the city of Sao Paulo, something interesting is going on. Because of a traffic jam, the problem is that the EVs can be used every day. However, the combustion engine vehicles are not allowed to in highways every day. So that is another way to promote these acquisitions. Here we have compact, small cars, but there is a very important SUV cars, a portion which are self-electrified, either with a plug-in, with a battery, or only hybrids, because they are bigger, they can be used for cargo. So these are more attractive for those who have the possibility to acquire these kinds of EVs. Something that is also very important is that in Brazil, over a year ago, there was an incentive approved for people to use solar panels at home. Not for buildings, but for houses. So those who are in the conditions of purchasing these panels, the photovoltaic panel, they started then they have an e-car. So they use their own electricity, which is paid and which is obtained, by these panels that they have. So we are having more and more people understanding the importance of investing in these systems because it comes a closed circle. Here you can see the charging spots. These are the public ones. I am not able to show you the private ones or the solar ones or the ones that are done at the residential sector. But many people is talking about the need of regulation and reglementation of having a single and unified system in order for us to provide charging stations, right? So people can travel in Latin America. But again, if you can see, these charging points coincide with the municipalities where we have higher concentration of EVs. The idea is to ensure and guarantee that people can be self-sufficient and have certain amount of autonomy when they leave their houses, right? That they know that they will be able to find a charging point nearby. So I won't go into details because other colleagues have previously shown in their presentations part of the things that I wanted to show. So I coincide with them. And if we look at the next slide, you can see the information of the assembling companies. They have the investment for hybrid vehicles. It is important to say that in Brazil, the energy mix in Brazil for transportation is very renewable because of the presence of biofuels. So the concerns here are not only to use a road for decarbonization of the transportation public services. We have many other routes that we can explore, more alternatives. So yes, we are aware of the importance of this, but we have other alternatives. So we don't see problems in this sense. And this has to be, of course, part of the decarbonization policy. And here we have other items which show the neo-industrialization, which is called, there is a public policy that is called Mover, which means move, which recognizes the need of efficient EVs in Brazil. This is a Brazilian economical reality that reflects the amount of EVs being sold and the price of them. Their price, the average price, has gone up compared to other things in Brazil. So the public, right, the citizens who are able to purchase these cars can now choose whether they want to use an SUV or an EV. There is a higher degree of acquisition capacity. In terms of the production of the EV fleet, you can see that 23%, our planning was foreseen for the participation of this medium term up until 2035. This is the most updated information. We'll start here, and the idea is for it to get the 23% of hybrid cars being sold by the end of the reserve period. But now we also have a higher degree of participation in the Brazilian fleet. The change is slow. We go slowly because the Brazilian cars are very old. So for everyone to be able to change their cars, it will take a lot of time. Even though we have a higher degree of people are very aware of this importance, right? But we still have around 85% of vehicles that are combustion engine with bioethanol. This is something that impacts, of course, our carbon footprint. But we are running into the efforts of decarbonizing our economy. Again, with the presence of bioethanol and other biomethane and other fuels. And just briefly, my Chilean colleague also expressed how they really try to promote the use of e-buses in the public transportation fleet. We agree with that. We're also doing that. This is very important for Brazil. We share this view. It is important not to have this as a state policy, but we also want to unify our policies and get to learn from our colleagues in other countries in terms of the presence of electrification. Here we have the presence 69.4% inside the city at an urban level and 81.5% for metropolitan services. When it comes to trucks, we have the last miles for small, semi-light and light trucks. These are going to be very impacted by the electrification. Heavy duty will continue to be combustion engine ones. And as we are able to make progress, as you know, Brazil has a huge potential for producing biomethane, and we use it for these kinds of cargo and transportation, but we hope to be able to also apply the decarbonization to the heavy-duty transportation. This is something that happened in Brazil.
Combustíveis líquidos, los biometanos para hacer la descarbonización. Mismo así, seguimos con la expectativa de tener
We are also having the expectation to have licensing for all the kinds of e-vehicles at the end of the current government period. And the light and semi-light vehicles and trucks that will be able to obtain a lot of electrification, it would be there will be an increase of 19% of the licenses, and the semi-heavy and heavy ones will continue to have the possibility of operate with biomethane. And for 2035, the bus fleet will be electrified and it will reach 48.5 thousand units. This is what we are expecting. Of course, we have to continue to promote this through policies. But we can foresee a huge impact in terms of the growth of the demand for energy. So we need to understand how to deploy in a better way these charging stations. And this is why we're here, in order to learn from the other countries in Latin America so we can deploy this in a safely way. Thank you so much. And I am open for any questions or comments you may have. Thank you so much, Raquel. Your Spanish is very good. Thank you so much. And when it comes to the progress made by Brazil in the region, it is very interesting. We noticed this huge advance in electromobility and in sustainable energy. This has been happening for a long, long time. So thank you for sharing your experience. And if you share your presentation with us, we will surely share it with the rest of the participants. Thank you, Raquel. And just to finalize the presentation part, I will now give the floor to Antonella Tambasco. She's an engineer at the division of the Energy Division of the Ministry of Energy, Industry and Mining. She will share with us the Uruguayan experience. Thank you, Antonella. You have the floor.
Ya están viendo la presentación, ¿verdad?
You can see the presentation, right?
Bueno, buenos días a todos. Trataré de
Thank you so much. I will try to be brief because there are many things that are already covered and maybe repeated. So other countries in the region have shared information regarding this. I will just to say that Uruguay, as well as other countries in Latin America, we are different from what happens in the rest of the world because of our generation matrix and how some few adjustments can transform our consumption. We have a higher amount of a degree of consumption related to the derivatives of oil. Historically, the transportation sector, beyond, apart from the fact that the industry has improved its consumption, the transportation sector continues to be the second one in terms of consumption, and that's why they are at the core of our policies. We look at the final consumption of oil derivatives. We can see transportation once again represented. And in the case of Uruguay, there is a similar consumption in terms of automotive gasoline, and this is used by private cars and for cargo transportation. And here you can see in gray from 2014, 2015, the consumption of electricity related to e-mobility.
Our
part, the only public buses, the only buses that are e-buses are public ones, and then cars, pickups, or other vehicles represent the 95% of our part, and in terms of consumption, they represent 55% of the consumption because the rest is related to gas oil and other kinds of mobilities. This is why when you look at it in terms of CO2 as a whole, all the sectors, not only transportation, you can see represented gas oil in dark brown and gasoline in red. And this is where we think about the policies related to the energy consumption and the decarbonization.
ha presentado sus compromisos
Uruguay has presented
por el país.
its committed to the country agreement for the NS 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3, where we have specific guidelines and where transportation has a role, which is aligned to the climate change policies and the energy policies. And at a national level, we are also aligned to the with the energy efficiency plans that I will tell you later on. And also, since we count with the support of international advisors, we are also to put people at the core of this, not only thinking about the vehicle itself. And in this sense, this image represents GZ1, and the idea is not to think how to improve, but you have to see how to reduce the consumption of fuels in this transition, but how to work in a coordinated manner with municipal governments and other bodies on improving mobility in order to avoid unnecessary trips and, when necessary, having them in more efficient transportation means, where we, of course, have electric mobility in several axes.
Esto era el parque, lo que está marcado, digamos, y actualizándolo de la presentación que habíamos hecho en el grupo interno de
Here you can see in this graph the representation presented at OLADE. Up until June, we have 5,000 vehicles being sold. Now we have gone further than, we have more than 11,000 vehicles being sold, and we're very happy to see this because it means that there is more offer, the technology is safe, people is considering this as an option, but it also generates new challenges as the rest of the countries have. These challenges have to do, once again, with the charging network. Historically, the public utility service, UTE, has created in the public routes, or they have installed these charging points. And we also have some private companies installing charging stations. And they are signing agreements with bigger shopping center areas or other kinds of areas that usually gather a lot of people. And we are working on the regulation related to charging services, where even though we have a decree stating topics and things regarding the safety for these charging stations, we also have new stakeholders coming into the market that are always being updated. Uruguay has worked in a coordinated manner for many years at a public and also private sector with the support of the academy. Since 2014, we have a council, a committee, where we have the participation of the involved ministries, but also public companies with the representation of the municipal governments and safety and road safety agencies, in order to try to work together and not to create
de común acuerdo. Y también en 2022 se creó una mesa
in order to maximize the efforts and not to double the efforts in the works that we do. We have been able to include the academia and the private sector over the last years, and the idea is to, again, continue to work with this working group, including the new updates that we have. These new updates in February of this year, and the land organization law, sustainable policy was integrated by the Ministry of Industry, Energy and Mining, the Ministry of Transportation and Public Works, the Planning and Budget Office, and the Ministry of the Environment. And this interinstitutional commission is now official, and it also sets goals with a horizon to 2050 in order to continue to make progress at a long
Y
term.
bueno, este año se realizó la primera reunión de esa
This
comisión
year,
que
we
crea
have the
de
first meeting
movilidad
of this
sostenible,
Commission
donde
for
veníamos
Sustainable
realizando la
Mobility,
Secretaría
where
Técnica
our
que
ministry
continuaría
will
su trabajo
represent
técnico,
and will
digamos, en ese
continue to
sentido.
have the
Y
technical
bueno, esa
secretariat.
política excede obviamente
And
los
this
temas
policy
energéticos
exceeds
porque
energy
busca un
topics
acceso inclusivo en la
because we
ciudad, se
try to
minimizan
have
los
an
impactos
inclusive
ambientales donde obviamente hay
access to
figura todo lo
minimize
energético,
environment
y
impact
también los temas de seguridad
and
y de
also
diversidad
safety
económica de la
and
ciudad,
diversity,
promoviendo
economic diversity
pequeños
in
centros
order to
también de
promote
trabajo
also
y
smaller working
que
centers.
las personas puedan evitar viajes, pero que
So
también
for
tengan
people
el
to
confort,
also be
digamos,
able
y que
to
logren
avoid longer
sus
trips,
objetivos.
but knowing that they
En lo que
can
tiene que ver con los
reach
impactos
their
ambientales,
final
obviamente está
destinations.
vinculado a las emisiones gaseosas contaminantes, tanto las locales, o sea, lo que tiene que ver con NOx y material particulado, como emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero. También
Here
lo que
we
tiene que
can
ver
see
con
the representation of the acoustic contamination factors. This is not only changing the vehicles, but making sure how we can avoid this congestion or this traffic jam issues. Aligned with these lines of work inside the ministry, we're working on the updating of these policies. We were able to finalize this draft in 2024, and the idea is for this plan to have specific lines, of course, aligned with the public policies.
de instrumentos fiscales, porque obviamente se han dado un montón de apoyos a movilidad eléctrica, pero también
We have a lot of tools to provide support to this sector and other sectors,
y necesidades, digamos,
and also to set other terms and needs that are going to be adapted to the sales and the movements in the market. And then, as Agustin said, in the market, we also have an objective of reaching 50% of the public transportation sector to 2030, thinking at the long thinking to this longer horizon for 2050 and to continue with the energy efficiency labeling in the public sector, in the public transportation sector, and also think about what we will do for other kinds of sectors, which can be interesting not only for the labeling framework, but it's important for us to continue to provide training that are not always in the formal sector, and also think about new programs which have been deployed in other countries. For example, how to invite other companies or the transportation companies or the private sector to get involved in the work that we do, not only for the rechange and exchange of the technology. It can be other technologies that provide aid and support to the goal that we have. This is going to be a multidisciplinary work, and here we have to include companies of all sizes. So it is important to continue thinking with this vision of a multidisciplinary work towards sustainable means of transportation. And in this sense, we have been having a lot of incentives. Uruguay imports vehicles, so we are able to exempt these import taxes, and we have also tax exception of 0% for a local tax for imported vehicles. There is still a gap, though, for cargo and heavy-duty vehicles. And then we also have specific programs like the program Subite, which is ongoing, and this has to do with rechargeable tricycles and scooters. The price for energy efficiency, which is a recognition that enables companies to gain recognition. The bigger public transportation company was the winner this year with a new program for managing their fleet with other interests in mind, not only for the certifications of energy efficiency, but this is also an economic benefit for them, right? Because it also generates economic benefits for these companies when they are awarded. And then these kinds of technologies will continue to be awarded according to the degree of efficiency. In terms of including some of these instruments, we updated this trust fund. We used to have a trust fund for public transportation that through the sales of gas oil, we were able to collect an amount of money which was transferred to these public transportation companies in order to subsidize what they do, in order to include new technologies. This is how this trust fund for sustainable mobility was created. And those vehicles which were older than 18 years old will not receive this subsidy starting next year. This is another way of promoting this change. But we have bigger goals in order to continue to work in this sense. And to do so, we are including cooperation programs in order to close the gaps for the access of funding, which are very important. And as I said before, training is very important. We have trained the fire department, the technical school, and we understand that these points that you see on screen are the ones in which we need to continue to make progress and invest, and they are included for next year program to continue to develop this in practice. We're also working with innovation and development with the technical and tertiary level institutions and universities. But we see that we also need to create further jobs. We're also running campaigns, as I said, with the energy efficiency label, which includes the EVs. We were a bit behind compared to the region, but now with this, we're also providing this information, which is available and public to everyone at Ursea's website that you can see on screen. And here we are sharing these trial results. This was because of a request that we received from the importers, and we are also enforcing and making sure that all this information is available to all users. And the challenges, as we proposed earlier on in our meetings of the working group, have to do with the new business models that are emerging, the interoperability, and the regulatory frameworks, not only national ones, but at a regional level, how to make sure that we are aware of the dimension of the needs that our cities may have, that maybe sometimes it is not a fact of having a lot of technological transformation or state-of-the-art technologies right from the beginning. What we need at the beginning is to have skilled people, to share our experiences, to have proper regulation of these vehicles and these batteries. So this is a challenge as well for the importers and for those who are going to be processing these batteries or other kinds of debris or waste generated by these EVs in the future. So we're also promoting this in terms of research. And then when we talk about the situation of Uruguay, we would like to continue to work in this working group, and we are here to help other countries in the region. Thank you so much. Uruguay, because of its size and its population, when you look at the per capita figures, we are leading. But the improvement that you can see are going to be maintained towards the future. So this is very promising, and it will be represented. We have a question here with Antonella. We'll open up now for questions. Fabiana Maricio, what are the normative or the regulation obstacles or challenges do you see for public transportation? If each one of the panelists can share their vision in this sense, what are the regulatory framework obstacles to regulate public transportation? I don't know if you want to take the floor. What are your experiences in terms of obstacles for the regulatory framework? Otherwise, I can call you.
No, sí, a ver, en el caso de Uruguay tenía esta particularidad.
In the case of Uruguay,
normativo tenía esta particularidad
as a regulatory
asociado al gasoil.
obstacle, we have the issue of the subsidy of the tickets, but it took us a lot of years.
O sea, si bien son empresas privadas,
because even though these are private companies, they offer a public service.
Después el otro tema es en el
That the other topic that I don't know if it's the same for all countries, but in the case of Uruguay, each municipal government defines the regulation in terms of public transportation. So we can set general guidelines on technology, emissions, minimum requirements, but then when it has to do with permits and circulation, those are under the scope of each municipal government.
Y después en sí para lo que es en particular transporte eléctrico, en nuestro caso.
And then for electrical transportation,
los pesos de los vehículos.
The regulation about the weights of the vehicles because of the maximum weight that they can transport.
Permitiendo un porcentaje adicional,
enabling an additional maximum weight in order not to lose capacity for passengers, which also impacts the infrastructure. We have to strike a balance here, right? But this would enable more batteries, more independence. And we wanted to promote these technologies as well. Thank you so much, Hernán. You have been working a lot. Chile, the second country in the world with more electrical wind resources. This is very broad because when we understand that public transportation has to do not only with the e-cars, but we have the e-buses, the energy, the infrastructure, and then vehicles. When it comes to permits in these processes, this is very, very slow. And I think that many times they use these public charging terminals and then they want to convert them into electrical ones. So we have to make sure that the technology involved measures the feasibility of this transition. This is the first barrier, the technical difficulties, right, for the infrastructure. Under this figure, the Ministry of Transportation in Chile understood that this was a problem, and what we did in the current tender is that they said, okay, this is the tender process. These are the places where we would like to have these stations, but we already processed what are the conditions of these stations. Because at the beginning, we have to build everything, and then with the permits, they would need to extend. They would extend the permits. We had everything ready, but the permits were not ready, so we were lagging. We were lagging behind. So understanding these, we need to make sure, as it was done in this tender, that the permits were already in place after having the discussions with the government and the governments, and then the government will say, okay, these are the charging points. How would you install your technologies? And this is better, because when you have to start implementing these, you don't understand how this is going to affect the city at the level of the energy, the routes, and everything that happens behind the scenes. So I think that closing this gap was key for Chile, and now develop these projects in Chile is very, very fast, just a couple of months, because we have already gone through the stage of having the permits ready, because all the feasibility studies were already conducted beforehand. Right, Rachel, would you like to share your experience? I think that in the case of Brazil has the legal infrastructure of including these technologies. Not only when we talk about cars, but also other kinds of things that we have in the city, and the funding possibilities that we have for the cities to include the participation of these kinds of electrification. And this can be part of a mobility plan, which makes more sense when we take a look at the reduction of emissions, the participation of fuels with less carbon components. Here, we notice a smaller participation of hydrogen, but we try to include other kinds of transportation, like the maritime transportation, river transportation. But yes, we want to include all these technologies, demanding less energy and looking at decarbonization. Here we have a national legislation which covers at a national level how things have to be done. But then, as in the case of Uruguay, each province here, each state, is authorized to adapt it according to the budget that they have and the capabilities to include them in their cities.
No sé, Lola, si nos estás acompañando, sé que tenías que salir a otro compromiso.
Lola, I don't know if you're still here with us. Would you like to comment anything?
Han llegado varias preguntas al chat. Nos queda poquito tiempo. Esto demuestra el gran interés que hay.
We don't have much time left, and we still have many questions, which shows how important this is. There is a user. Someone is asking, what are the obstacles to identify transport at an interurban level? Is it politically viable or feasible to remove the fossil fuel vehicles for good? What do you think in terms of the work ahead? For urban transportation, we find situations that are complex because of the distances, right? We see that the heavy-duty vehicles and these buses, in order to generate this intercity route, we need to have the infrastructure first. But again, the lesson learned from us today, the transportation route which was implemented in some Latin American countries, has to do with infrastructure that have to do with power and capabilities from 100 to 150 kilograms. So we have identified that many companies have taken as a scenario to electrify the transportation fleet for public services. So we need to improve the loading times, the charging times. And this had to do with units of 600 kilograms.
Pero ¿cuál es la gran gracia que tiene esta unidad de 600 kilos? Ejemplo que trae.
And these 600 kilograms, maybe it has 2 or 3 dispensers, but one of them is a booster. It means that it injects almost 400 amperes directly to the bus. So the charging time of the bus will fluctuate in 20 minutes. So if I'm moving from one region to another, 20 minutes will be impacting my transportation. So this technology is coming hand in hand with transportation, urban transportation. This is the solution that is generating these new technologies. So everything that we have done so far, 50 kilograms or more, is obsolete because it works only for light vehicles, but buses or trucks, we need more power to reduce the charging time. And what was the question from Ecuador? Whether it would be politically feasible to remove for good the fossil fuel engines. This is very complex. The more catastrophic scenario in the region that we thought that it would never happen, but it is happening. We will take you to Bolivia. Bolivia has kept the price of the fuel for 20 years. We ran a study in order to remove that subsidy to the fuel for and we found that it was not politically feasible and socially even less, because people will be reluctant, and all the logistic, merchandise, goods, everything has been subsidized. And then we also have the gas implemented as a variable in this equation. But what happened? They said, okay, no, we cannot remove the subsidy, and that won't happen. But we noticed that all the transportation was fueled by gas, which is a fossil resource. And in Bolivia, they are at the final stages of producing. The new batches would be ready in a long time. So we started to have a queuing process. So electromobility would be the fastest solution. A year ago, no e-cars were sold, but now they have an important EV car because it is a solution to a fossil fuel, which was not present in this market before. So we didn't have to push this further. We said, do not offer subsidy systems, electrify your transportation, and the difference here will help you to invest more in education and in other kinds of policies like health. We also provide, through the German government, we provide counseling to the Bolivian government. But when the subsidy has been in place for many years, you can find a social revolution, very huge rejection. So it's very complex. You have to think outside the box, think outside of it, and see how this will affect different parts of the government. Because electromobility, it's not only CO2. We also have CO2, social welfare. So we need to know how to conjugate all these things in order to have a transversal product to meet everybody's goals. Thank you so much. We don't have more time, so we can take only one more question and one more answer. How can electrical public mobility with the micro-mobility, what are the experiences? Lola shared the experience that they have in Madrid. And we also have the experience from Rachel in Brazil, but I don't know if anyone want to share their experience? We can see you now, Lola. Any further comments on how these experiences can be complemented for micro-mobility and public mobility? I think that this is multimodal, and it was already mentioned, right? Yes, we're trying to have this door-to-door project, walking, skate, scooter. The base of mobility has to have a very important micromobility answer.
Fantástico, muchas gracias.
Great, thank you. And then a last comment, Gilberto.
Así que el comentario, es bien interesante. Dice, creo que los mayores obstáculos.
It says that the higher amount of obstacles come from the infrastructure, and in a country with a continental dimension like Brazil, face a huge challenge. So this is just a comment. Of course, each country may have their own characteristics, which make for the policies to be adapted to reflect these needs. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you all. Agustin Gonzalez, the manager of energy efficiency of the Uruguayan Energy Agency. He had another commitment, Luis Felipe Kirama for PNUMA, and we would like to thank all the participants, national and international, for joining us today. It was a true pleasure to be here with you. I don't know, Agustin, if you want to say anything else, just to close.
Perfecto, Fitzgerald, muchas gracias. Agradecerle también, sumarme a los agradecimientos
I would like to thank you all for all the participants. Your participation has been spectacular. And again, I'd like to reinforce our commitment as a GTO leading country with Fitzgerald in office, and to conduct this working group towards future goals. This is very interesting. And this also implies for 2026 a very intense working agenda, very broad and challenging, which makes it very, very interesting. So we will continue to see each other next year, earlier than later. So thank you so much. And we are here to help you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. We will continue to be in touch, and e-mobility will continue to gather us. Thank you so much.
Recording
everybody.
stopped.